Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining today's webinar, Life Beyond PPC in the Travel Sector. My name's Sarah, I'm Marketing Manager here at Sagittarius, and today's host will be Josh Whiten, Digital Marketing Director of Sagittarius. Today's webinar will be approximately 30 minutes long, with 15 minutes at the end for some Q&A questions. Please feel free to ask your questions in the questions box within the webinar portal, and we will address these at the end. If you do have any questions also regarding the content or want to ask us a question outside of today's content, please feel free to also ask those questions and we will address them separately. So without further ado, I will hand you over to Josh to start today's webinar.
Thank you, Sarah, and welcome along everyone. Good afternoon to our webinar today on pay-per-click in the travel sector. So, as Sarah said, I'm a Digital Marketing Director here at Sagittarius. I know some of you know us already, and looking down the attendee list, there's some people who don't know us and are new to Sagittarius, which is brilliant. You're very welcome. So for those of you who don't know, we're a full-service digital agency, multi-award winning, but we particularly specialise in the travel space. Just a little bit of the corporate messages, I guess, before we get started fully. We try and focus on performance and performance marketing within digital, and really what that looks like is on my part of the agency, which is digital marketing, that will drive traffic and help create brands, and then I work with my colleagues on the website and platform side of the digital equation, if you like. What that looks like in practice, as you can see on the left-hand side there in the green section, those are the sort of services which we're involved in more and more in areas like native and programmatic, which we're going to touch on later. So about you, we gave this some thought to sort of try and think as to what sort of people we wanted to aim this webinar today at. And we're kind of guessing you're probably in a mid-level to senior marketing role. You may well be a sort of director or board level or even a business owner. Probably tour operator, travel, hotel, self-catering. But in terms of experience with pay-per-click, we're really sort of thinking about the people who have tried pay-per-click in the past or are trying to make it more profitable. It could be that's been done in-house by yourselves or your marketing team, or maybe you're working with an agency to do that. And it could be that, as with a lot of people in marketing, you're kind of trying to evaluate and consider wider digital channels and techniques as well. If you do have sort of a lot more or a lot less experience than that, that's fine. There'll be some aspects of the content here that I'm sure will be helpful to you. And again, as Sarah said, if you had wider questions that this sort of brings up, you can ask those at the end, or we can discuss those after the webinar. Your challenges, I touched on some of those just now, but really from what we see speaking to travel clients and potential clients and looking at the travel trade press as well, there seems to be this real challenge around trying to drive that profitable direct traffic and bookings to your website. And all too often that means that you're reliant on pay-per-click, and by that really we mean Google AdWords, but you're finding it too competitive or too costly. And when we say competitive, it could be you're competing with Google itself, increasingly some people feel in the travel sector, or meta search or OTAs, often reselling your own product actually. So really you have this challenge of trying to discover new cost-effective direct channels which can supplement or even sort of replace to an extent pay-per-click if you found that hasn't really worked for you as well in the past. And lastly, it's always hard to know when you evaluate these channels as to what success looks like and what you should expect. So the aims for today, we're going to look at some of the specific problems and issues that the travel sector finds with PPC, and really identify some new paid digital channels you could consider, which are ways to get more direct traffic from consumers, and really to help you reduce that reliance on AdWords. I'm going to share as much advice and as many insights as I can, but I will do my best to do that as simply as possible, and as we said, we can answer questions at the end. So let's get started and get stuck into life beyond PPC in the travel sector. So travel and pay-per-click, some might describe these two as an uneasy relationship, similar to the two chaps pictured here from as a topical reference. Kind of need each other, but that relationship possibly a little strained at times. Why do we care about pay-per-click? Well, it is important in the travel sector. We did some analysis recently and took a sample of half a dozen different travel brands we were working with and identified what proportion of their website traffic is actually coming from paid search. On average, we found that the travel brands we work with are getting about 16% of their website traffic from pay-per-click. So it's definitely sizable enough to really sort of care about this, but also travel brands are potentially almost a bit too reliant on pay-per-click. And the issues with pay-per-click, well, I sort of summarise them as cost, competition, and conflict. And let me explain what I mean. So these are some quotes from the travel press. So in terms of cost, there's been a lot of coverage around how Google AdWords and the bids, it's just not competitive to buy that traffic in, especially if it's non-brand search, so more sort of a product or destination related search terms. The numbers can be really hard to sort of make them add up and to sort of get a decent cost per acquisition or an acceptable return on investment, just because of the high cost of those terms. Competition, it can be disrupted, pay-per-click, and this is a nice example from last year, but just prior to its failure, several people were reporting that there was bid inflation as low-cost travel group was really throwing the kitchen sink at pay-per-click and ramping up bids that drove the cost up for everyone. And that's just one example of the way that the pay-per-click ecosystem can be disrupted by competitors. And conflict, and by this I mean conflict of interest, and this is a quote from a blog post that actually my colleague Sarah wrote on the Sagittarius blog around sort of earlier last year about how Google's starting to creep into the travel sector, and some in the market was sort of getting a bit uncomfortable that Google was moving too far. In this case, it was the Book on Google feature. And then, obviously, last year there was the big change with the way that AdWords ads were displayed in search results. And as I'm sure everyone's aware, the before and after, so this was a search for sort of a sightseeing tours, and this was before the change, and you can see the two orange labelled ads at the top and then on the right-hand side, the start of a column of the right-hand column of ads there. And basically, that was restructured, and we're now left with potentially up to 4 ad slots at the top of the page. There are 4 ad slots at the bottom of the page, but we're really sort of seeing very little traffic come from those. Now, at the time when this happened, there were various predictions of doom, and quite a few people said this is going to be the end of PPC, particularly in travel, where it was already sort of being seen as quite costly anyway. And some of those possible impacts were seen as, well, obviously increased competition for those top 4 ad slots. That's going to lead to increased bid inflation. So then that could drive a fall in clicks because you're getting a falling ad position, push up the cost per clicks, generally a bad scenario. But also that last point as well, just increasing those 3 ad slots to 4 at the top of a SERPs page is also pushing down organic search results as well. So also a secondary potential impact on your organic search results. And we did certainly see some impact. I'm pleased to say the majority of clients that we manage, we have been optimizing their accounts on trying to optimize the quality score within AdWords, and that meant that we were actually, or they were fairly immune to the change. But I did get hold of some data. This was for a global travel brand that we were able to sort of see some of their data. And before the change, their pay-per-click traffic was driving a just over 30% year-on-year increase in traffic. Now, they had seen some bid inflation, so that traffic was, their cost per click was already up year-on-year by quite an amount, actually, over 50%. But this was all before that change in the ad slots. Afterwards, we can see actually they started to lose traffic by 15% year-on-year, which is obviously going to have a significant impact on their revenue targets. but almost 150% increase, so sort of 3 times worse, really, that increase in the cost per clicks year on year. So that's a really significant change in that. This was over about a 4-month period before and after the change. So in summary, that brand is now left paying more for less traffic. And as I say, that's really going to impact on the bottom line. So having summarized some of the perceived and actual issues with pay-per-click, not least of which is many brands are finding themselves competing against their own resellers or OTAs, as we sort of mentioned in the introduction. What are the alternatives? Well, we've outlined a few options for you. I'm going to sort of talk through and explain some of these channels or ideas you may be familiar with. Some of them may be newer. And hopefully it will give you some food for thought as to different ways to move beyond pay-per-click and the reliance on that channel. So the first one we're going to talk about is Facebook ads. Now, the reason we chose this was I'd read quite recently in the travel press quite a lot of talk around some brands who are moving their effort away from AdWords into Facebook ads. A couple of quotes here that I've read just in the last week, actually. One from cheapflights.co.uk saying that they started testing Facebook ads and they're going to spend more on that channel next year. So that was a quote from last year. And cruise.co.uk, they still spend more on Google than Facebook ads, but they really see that changing in the next 5 years. So it's definitely, there's been a shift. We've been working with Facebook ads for a couple of years now, at least, but I know quite a few travel brands may have dabbled in the past or come into Facebook ads as quite new to the channel. So one thing to really bear in mind with Facebook ads is it's not the same type of targeting as AdWords. We're not targeting specific search terms. You're targeting audiences and their characteristics. And one amazing thing about Facebook ads as a sort of experienced marketing person like myself, is just brilliant. There's an infinite number of targeting options, it seems, and different combinations that you can use to really drill down and find people to target. And these could be just a couple of very top-level examples here around core targeting options around, basic demographics. It could be, what generation someone falls into, or their affluence. It could be their number of children, their relationship status. There's a whole range of very sort of normal, if you like, and familiar targeting options available in Facebook ads. But there are some niche ones as well that could be of interest for the travel sector. So in the behaviours section of ad targeting options, there's a couple of highlighted here. Under behaviours, it could be people about to celebrate an anniversary in the next 2 to 3 months. That could well be an interesting potential audience or market for some travel brands. And there is a behaviour category for travel, in fact, based on what type of traveller someone is, whether they're frequent travellers. And there's more options than I've just sort of screen grabbed here. But frequent international travellers would obviously might be of interest to a tour operator. But actually, one of the best areas to look is here within the interest section. So if you go into interests, then into hobby and activities, and then into travel, there's a really rich seam of targeting options in here to look at. And these are just some of the options available, but you've got the type of travel that people enjoy. Beaches, air travel, adventure travel, cruises, eco-tourism, people more likely to be interested in hotels. So there's some really good segments in there, which obviously you can combine with other targeting options. So it could be gender, it could be affluence, and obviously location as well. So you might be targeting people within a certain radius of one of your hotels, if it's in the UK, or within a certain radius of a departure airports that you may offer, to really sort of within an hour's drive of those locations. And then with Facebook ads, you need to consider the different audience formats which are available. So I guess the most obvious one, the one that most people start out with, is what we call a prospecting or acquisition audience. So that's where you go through the process that I've just illustrated. Really, you create a new audience from scratch that you want to target based on your knowledge of your market. So that could be around your own wider research in things like geodemographic data like Mosaic, an analysis of your customer base, or just knowledge of your audience and your market. And you build up that profile, your idea of a profile, as we've just seen, and it might be you build several of those profiles and then test them against each other. But actually, we're also very interested here in the custom audiences available in Facebook ads. And one of the most obvious ones that people will sort of test out first would be a remarketing audience of people who've previously visited your website based on what URL they visited within the page, within the website. And you can set some basic rules and conditions around pages they have visited, filtered against pages they maybe haven't visited. What I mean by that is you would filter maybe people who've clicked build an itinerary or add to basket on an e-commerce site, but who have not visited your final checkout, thank you, or confirmation page. So they're people who are a good part of the way through your conversion funnel or your user journey, but they haven't quite reached the end. So that's a very obvious opportunity. Those audience quantities are not going to be huge, and cost per clicks from Facebook ads are generally fairly affordable anyway. So that is a really good place to start with a remarketing custom audience like that. But we also do a lot of work now working with brands, and we're just working with one at the moment who's really starting out for the first time with digital. And in their case, they've got email data historically from their CRM. And we're able to export that in various segments, upload those email lists into Facebook ads, and create custom audiences where Facebook is able to link that email address with a Facebook Live user account. Normally we find for sort of maybe travel, probably about 60–65% of a client's email database can be recognized as Facebook users. And if that's a reasonable amount of data, then that gives you a good slice of people to start targeting an ad campaign to. And then lastly, and this is one of the really clever bits of Facebook ads, it's the lookalike audience, which some of you may have come across already. But basically you can choose several different types of audiences and then effectively ask Facebook to clone that audience and find you more people like those users in that audience who share the same characteristics. Now, they won't know about your brand at all yet, but using big data and all of the access to the information Facebook has, its profiling of people who match your audience is really impressive and really powerful. And in fact, sometimes we see better conversion rates from a lookalike audience than from a client's own email data put into a custom audience. And you can also create a lookalike audience of people who currently like your Facebook page as well if you've been investing in a really good, strong social media following. And one newer development is in dynamic ads for travel using Facebook ads. And this is where, particularly for hotel brands, it's been rolled out initially. And this is where Facebook will show a remarketing advert to that visitor after they leave your website. But you may have seen these yourselves. This is where the ad content is dynamically customized based on the last product that they viewed on your website. So there's some technical implementation work to do here. It's not the easiest thing to get up and running, but that can be a really interesting way to say, hey, you were last looking at this hotel and it's still available, or here's a deal on it, or our latest prices. And it can be rolled out to flights as well. So as I say, we've been working with Facebook ads for a good couple of years now, and over that time we have picked up some tips I wanted to share with you. So really it is a great channel for, effectively what we're doing is data mining, as you used to do with traditional direct mail and direct marketing, where you are identifying a segment and then targeting that audience with Facebook ads, and then the ones that convert or come back through to the site can go to a different remarketing audience, and you just keep drilling down and drilling down. And also it's great for cross-channel retargeting. If you've got traffic coming to your site from another channel, coming into a landing page, then you use the URL of that landing page to create a remarketing audience, and then you can follow up to those people on a different channel on Facebook. We do find, though, particularly with a prospecting audience, the traffic you drive in from Facebook. It's easy to get lots of traffic. It's easy to get interest, but it might not convert straight away. And that's for lots of reasons. I think sometimes if a user is in Facebook on social media, they're maybe not in the mindset to buy right now. It might be a bit of a distraction, and then they might go back and then come back. So you do need to bear that in mind. And in some cases, actually, we're using Facebook and social PPC generally, actually for that reason, is more of a display or awareness raising channel, because Facebook can give you terrific reach to a wider audience at relatively low cost. Once you do find a technique that works, then scale up aggressively with lookalike audiences, match that audience and find more people like it, and then expand your reach from there. Because Facebook ads, and if you've been to some of our talks before, you've maybe heard me give this analogy before, Facebook audiences are like a static pool of the same people versus a Google AdWords search campaign is going to see a constantly changing stream of new people passing through all the time. So because with Facebook you're talking to the same group of people over a period of time, maybe a couple of months, you do need to update your messages and creatives more often than you would with AdWords to avoid them basically getting bored with your messages. And that also, we'd always encourage people to try different formats. Cinema graphs work really well, particularly with travel. The video option now to embed video into Facebook ads is excellent, really good results and click-through rates from that. But also promoting just wider inspiration content, and maybe combining it with the boosted post option as well from your Facebook page. And my final tip really would to be, if you're really going to embrace Facebook ads as a possible alternative or supplement to Google AdWords search pay-per-click, don't underestimate the amount of work involved, because of this rotation of creative that's needed and the infinite targeting options and all the different audiences that you can create. It can very quickly start to scale up and almost get out of control. So it needs some really good planning in advance and some good sort of investment in resource to look after this for you. So after Facebook ads, the next area I wanted to talk about was native advertising. Again, those of you who work with Sagittarius already may be familiar with this channel. It's something we've been working on probably for about 18 months now, really successfully with a range of clients targeting consumers, not just in the travel space. And the best way to explain native is just to show you, I think. So what we've got here is a snapshot of the travel section from The Independent. And what native ads allow you to do is to place a link to your content within a third-party media or news website's newsfeed. And it's called native because it looks and feels the same style as the rest of the site within which it's appearing. So it's very softly branded, and it is promoting content, not product. So on this example here, you'll see in the red box there, this is actually the subtle advertisement in this travel section. In this case, asking the user, come and explore the top 5 things around Costa Rica, so it's destination-led. Here's another example from another travel website, and you look at the second item down there. Again, same campaign. In this case, it's flagged as sponsored content, but it's still quite subtle within the feed. Now, what happens when someone clicks View More in this case, or clicks on that advert to read the content? Well, you have 2 options with native. The option on the left is what we call native traffic, and in this case the user has come to the full story, the full editorial piece, but that sits on the client's own website. So as you can see on the left-hand panel, we've got options here to surface other content as related articles, or try and get people to follow on social or sign up for the email newsletter, and also because we're driving traffic to our own website here, we could be tagging this landing page for future remarketing. And if your website is on a platform like Sitecore, we're a Sitecore Gold partner, and a lot of our clients are on Sitecore as a platform. It enables you to do personalization. So you could set an explicit personalization rule that says if someone's coming into this page from a native advertising campaign, then we can personalize components, such as in the side panel there, accordingly to really sort of target those people in a slightly different way. On the right-hand side, is an example of a native story campaign. So this is if I've clicked on the item on the independent, and in this case I'm staying on the independent, but my story is being hosted on their website. So this is not going to drive traffic as much, but it is probably going to keep me engaged with the story for longer, because staying on the independent is probably going to keep my trust. So this is better for awareness raising and inspiration, so much earlier on than possibly in the user journey towards conversion. We partner with AdUlike for native advertising as one of our sort of partners, and here's a couple more examples from them of travel sector native ad campaigns. This one's for an airline, Cathay Pacific, and in this one they're actually targeting a lifestyle topic. It's actually around very expensive malt whiskey, because their research shows them that's a subject of interest to their target segment and target audience. So again, they've gone for an even softer sell. It's not even destination, it's actually a much wider lifestyle topic. And this is one for tourism with Visit Orlando. And again here, this one was a mixture actually of native story and native traffic side by side, with content around discovering Orlando as a great place for couples to visit. Now it's quite interesting, we've got some stats here. Native story about 0.42% click-through rate, but native traffic about 0.94%. And that's very much what we see, although we are getting some better results from that, I'm pleased to say, on average from the campaigns we're running. But native story, it's a lower click-through rate, much more like display advertising for awareness, but native traffic, as the name suggests, is for driving sessions. So to recap on native ads, really you can use it to raise awareness and inspire, and we all know that inspiration piece is really key for the travel sector, of inspiring your potential audience through content. And that content could be lifestyle, it could be destination, but you can also drive traffic into your content and into your website using native. And in that case, as I said before, we get slightly better than average results through our campaigns. We're getting about 1 to 2% click-through rate. But the key thing is, for traffic you're bringing in, it's very early stage. These users are just engaging with content. And then on a secondary level with yourselves as a brand, and then really maybe not in the state of mind to be talking about product yet. So the traffic you get from native, you may well get some conversion from it, but you do need to invest in re-engaging with that audience through retargeting or social media, organic social, getting them to follow you, or email marketing. So it can often just be the start of a journey and the start of the conversation. So the next area we want to cover is programmatic. Now, you may have heard lots about programmatic, what it is, what it isn't, or like many people in digital, you really might be wondering, actually, what is it? How does it work? So I'm going to try and very simply give you an overview, because we feel this is a really exciting channel that's been emerging for a while now and is really bedded in, and that we are really starting to see solid results from. So programmatic, there's a lot of misunderstanding, because actually the term programmatic is used to describe both a digital marketing channel, but also a way of doing things. But actually what it is it's a new way to target your display ads to users across media device and the time when they're most likely to convert. So instead of making preset decisions about, I think this is a good place where my audience will be, I'm going to run a campaign on here, you're following your audience around. And basically those decisions are being automated using machine learning. So the other aspect of programmatic is the ad space is actually then being bought because of real-time bidding technology in these auctions at a much lower cost than if you planned a campaign out in advance, or a more traditional online display campaign. So in summary, it's sharing big data for a range of websites to really understand when you as a user, having been on a travel website, when actually is the best time or place to show you that follow-up ad based on your behavior. If we know you're more likely to click and buy something on a Sunday evening on your tablet, that's when programmatic campaigns will show you the advert. So it combines big data, that shared data between sites. It constantly optimizes as it goes to improve performance. So it's very results-led, and as I say, it obviously combines incredible technology and machine learning to make all of that happen. So in summary, it's almost like Rise of the Machines. Working in a digital agency, this is my obligatory science fiction reference for my colleagues and the team here, with a little screenshot from Terminator 3, Rise of the Machines. But it's an interesting way to describe programmatic. It's almost like letting go and kind of letting the machines take over to run your online advertising campaigns. So how does it work in practice? How can you use it? Well, you have to start by placing a tracking pixel on your website. And what that will do is we'll sit in the background and build up audience data for the key stages in your funnel. So typically your homepage and landing page, and then maybe your add to basket or build an itinerary page or contact page, and then maybe a post-booking page as well. So that will tick away and needs to be there for a little while, and then it will sort of build up a good picture of who your visitors are. And then you can do a couple of different things, different types of campaigns. You can run what you could describe as a much more intelligent retargeting campaign. So rather than just doing remarketing to follow up for everyone for 30 or 60 days after they've left the site without booking, we can actually show our retargeting adverts at the time and place almost of our audience's choosing based on their digital behavior. And then you can scale up and increase your reach by doing a prospecting campaign, which is similar to what we talked about earlier with the Facebook ad lookalikes. So basically a programmatic campaign will take the data around the people who have booked on your site and who are coming back and booking through a retargeting campaign, and we'll go and find people with the same characteristics, and we'll then go and target them, but again it will be in a very flexible way, on the same sort of time and device and time of day and day of week, and on the same sort of media that's proven to respond to that. And then the other clever aspect is once a programmatic campaign is up and running, it optimizes itself. So it will constantly be looking at the results and the targets, and it will be refining the targeting and improving the targeting based on those results. Typically that's going to be an online conversion rate, but you can also set a KPI of cost per acquisition as well that you might be comfortable with. So the benefits, well, it's obviously more cost effective than large scale displays. So if you're a travel brand that's been investing in some decent money in online display or even offline awareness raising campaigns and activities, programmatic should deliver you a pretty immediate cost saving and improvement in efficiency. It can be looked at as a potential alternative to non-brand pay-per-click if it's targeted very well. But obviously there's minimal management needed, which is appealing. And there's future options to maybe integrate with your own data or even personas, again touching on Sitecore clients. If you've been building up personas on your site, Sitecore's excellent at identifying users and dropping them into different groups and personas. There's potential opportunity. We're doing some work around sort of cutting edge work at the moment around targeting those Sitecore personas through their own programmatic campaigns. So to then sort of pull all of this together, the next area I wanted to talk about was multi-channel campaigns, and just a way to structure your activities to get you better results, to really give you some realistic options other than pay-per-click. And a lot of this is based around the science of momentology, something we've talked about before here at Sagittarius, but really this whole idea of identifying, when and where your customers or potential customers are engaging with you online, the different touch points, and where they sit within the different stages of a decision-making funnel. And then momentology is the idea of actually you're designing an integrated campaign to seize every moment and nudge them towards conversion. And it's this idea of seizing every moment. It's almost a shift in thinking from seize the day, carpe diem, to seize the moment, carpe momentum. It's difficult to do sometimes because, as we know, user journeys can be complex, and this is a diagram from our friends at Sitecore, which we particularly like, and on the top half of the fairly typical communication model you can see digital touch points, and then beneath that physical touch points. And we know that the typical user will bounce around between these, engaging with your brand in many different ways. And some of these touch points can even be outside the control of the digital marketing team. It could be call centers or offline branches. It could be through PR. So, we know that decisions are not made in straight lines, and we need to design campaigns around models which take this into account. So what we mean by this, and here's an example of a campaign for the travel sector, which is more around influencers and takes into account trying to create advocacy from consumers. So you start in the top left quadrant of awareness and then would move around through exploration, then into purchase, then into advocacy. And some of the digital channels we would then place into those different areas might begin with awareness. Native, you've seen, is a native story campaign, could be really good at that, and some paid social and some display. And then in the exploration phase, we could be using programmatic here with retargeting, and also sort of paid search and organic search, because that's responding to someone now looking for a destination, having had the awareness raising piece happen. And some influencer outreach, such as travel bloggers. And then in the purchase stage, we're really drilling down into that much more specific retargeting to get someone back into the conversion funnel, but also think about conversion rate optimization as a sort of parallel discipline to digital marketing, to really make that buy-in and booking process as easy as possible. And then lastly, you move into advocacy, where you would maybe use programmatic retargeting, but your email marketing program, marketing automation can kick in, and social media relationship building. Here's another example that is again for the travel sector, but more around focusing on content first, product second. So these are the steps on a typical travel website. We'd start with the content, then move from product, then to inquiry. Then you have the sales process. In this case, it might be around bespoke travel, so a travel consultant might work with the client, and then result in the booking, and then even the travel actually occurring. And you can kind of see here how the channels could feed into the content at the initial stage. And you can also see why we kind of call this the Pac-Man model in-house, if those of you who are old enough to get that reference. But you can see native advertising, organic search, these can all feed into the content first. And then we have other channels being used at different stages of the process to bring the user back in, because you're going to get dropout at each stage, and let's bring them back into the process. So that covers the idea and the concept behind multi-channel campaigns, but I didn't want to abandon good old pay-per-click and AdWords completely today. If you are in a situation where you do need to utilize it, I just wanted to share some of our current thinking around, really ways to improve your AdWords performance. So really, we want to be targeting improved ad ranks. So we've got these top 1 of 4, but we know that a change in those ad ranks can have a massive click-through rates. And this was the case even before the change with AdWords last year. Just to share a quick bit of data here, last year we were seeing that, according to this study, that the average click-through rate is maybe 12.2% for rank 1 of your ad. If you drop down to 3, it might be 0.2%. That's a massive drop. So that's even more in sharp focus with just 4 ad slots to choose from. How do we do this? Well, improving your click-through rate, your CTR, which could be through more engaging ads. We always try and test out different versions that are factual versus emotive. Ads which are using all the latest features and functionalities. Ad extensions in particular are really important. And one best example of that for travel really is the Review Star ad extension. And just a quick example here, search for London hotels. You can see several different sites, OTAs using review stars with great effect, and they really do stand out. And we partner with FIFO, and just sort of having spoken to them about this, we know Google has said about a 17% average increase in click-through rate if you use review stars. But FIFO has shared some case studies with us recently that show a 36% increase in CTR, which led to an 8% increase in sessions, 135% increase in first-time visitors. So that's a really important place to start. Reviews in travel can be a challenge because you don't have to wait till maybe the user has actually travelled and been on the holiday or the trip. But there's some ways around that you can have a review collected based on their experience of booking with you and using your website to help build up a brand review star rating. And really, as I said earlier on, our approach to managing AdWords is to really optimize for quality score. I won't go into quality score in huge detail here because it's a whole separate topic really, but really it's about ensuring the last point there, that relevance trail, really making sure that you've got this trail of relevance from the search term to the ad text to the landing page. And lastly, with AdWords as well, you could be looking to move upstream. What I mean by that is not getting those really competitive auctions for the most obvious keywords, but thinking about the user intent and thinking about what they might be doing earlier on in their research. So a little example that we used before, some of you may have seen this already, around Italy holidays. We've got 4 ads appearing here, but visit Italy and there's no ads appearing. And then I just updated this morning, in fact, with London hotels. Again, we've seen this example here, but let's look at places in London and there's no ads appearing. So investing in content to target that sort of earlier stage research intent type search activity can be really powerful. So to recap on what we've looked at today then, we've explored some potential new digital channels and we've looked at how they can be combined with an integrated sort of multi-channel approach. And we've thought about the user journey within this, and particularly as it's travel content and the inspiration piece. And in summary, really we've looked at all of this to try and improve the direct channel of consumer traffic without having to rely too much on costly or competitive pay-per-click. So we're going to see now if there's any questions which have come through whilst we've been talking, and I'll quickly do my best to answer a couple of those. Sarah, has there been anything that's been raised?
Yeah, I've got a few questions from today and also some questions that were raised from some of the delegates in advance of today's webinar, so I'll just start with those. First one is, how long does it take to set up a programmatic campaign?
Okay, so I mentioned earlier about you need to put the tracking pixel on your site. Well, best practice is you need that to just sit in the background for at least a couple of weeks. So you do need to plan slightly ahead with a 2-week lead time to start building up the data, and then your campaign can normally go live depending on your data volume. So if you're not getting huge amounts of traffic to your site, to be honest, you might need to leave the pixel in place for longer, but an average volume website, couple of weeks, and then you can set your campaign live, and then the optimization part really starts to kick in after another 2 or 3 weeks of the campaign running, where you'll then really start to see the improvements in performance.
Okay, another one, are Twitter ads a good option as well as Facebook ads?
Yeah, that's an interesting one. I know I dwelt specifically on Facebook ads as the best form of social PPC, and it kind of is, just because of the targeting options and the size of audience you got. But actually, yeah, we do use Twitter ads in campaigns. They do play a role. You have got some targeting options. They're not as good in my view as the Facebook ones, but there's geographic and gender and those types of criteria. But the most interesting thing with Twitter ads, I think, is targeting people who are interested in or talking about or following certain topics or users on Twitter. So you could be a bit sneaky and target some competitor brands, and the people who follow them, for example, through a Twitter ads campaign would be quite a good way to look at it. And lastly, we do find that the cost of traffic, cost per clicks on Twitter are normally pretty low as well.
Okay. And lastly, can you run a programmatic campaign as a one-off, or maybe a Facebook campaign as a one-off alongside your PPC activity as a test?
Yeah, that's a really good question, actually. The short answer is yes, you can, obviously. You can do either of those. A typical programmatic campaign, looking at the sort of minimum investment level that we need to look at to run one, is probably about 3 or 4 weeks to run a campaign. So you can definitely do that as a standalone, plus your 2-week lead in to build up the data. But you absolutely don't have to be running that all year. It could be linked around a seasonal campaign. And when we were talking earlier about multi-channel campaigns, obviously seasonal is really important for the travel sector. And so, yeah, you could build that into an upscaling of effort at a key time of year completely. And the same with Facebook ads. It's not quite the same as Google AdWords, where you do benefit if you're running something all year because it will help your quality score. So with Facebook ads, it's not as key to do that, but I guess the general rule, though, is with Facebook ads, you can definitely do it as a one-off or increase activity. But obviously, with all the testing options on there, the longer you can run it, even if it's at a lower level, the more data you're going to gain, the more you're going to learn, and the better you can optimize.
Okay, that's it, Josh. So
Okay, that's great. Thanks for those questions. So just to finish off, if you do want to know more, if you sort of this has kind of got you interested in finding out more about some of these subjects, I just wanted to highlight a bit of further reading, if you like, and watching. So my colleague Chris Borman in our digital marketing team did a fantastic webinar himself recently, a few weeks ago, on the future of search for the travel sector. Really recommend you check that out, looking at lots of interesting things like voice search and mobile, and local, and these sorts of things. And you can find that webinar. It's on our YouTube account, but I've made a link there for bit.ly/Sag YouTube Travel. That's our travel playlist in our YouTube account, and that will take you straight in there to Chris's video and the other case studies we've got around travel. I'd also recommend you check out our blog. The whole team here contribute to the blog at Sagittarius. It's one of the best things, about the team here at the agency. Everyone's really engaged, and there's some brilliant content in there around travel in particular as one of our most important verticals that we work in. Also, just a couple of quick ads. Some of the team are at the Travel Technology Europe event at Olympia next week for a couple of days. We're exhibiting there with Sitecore, who we are partners with. So if you're attending, please do feel free to stop by and say hi and meet some of the team there. And lastly, we have one of our kind of quarterly offline events, one of our masterclass sessions happening on the 23rd of March, and this is also aimed at the travel sector. So this is around knowing your niche in travel marketing, so it really complements what we've talked about today very well. As I say, that's on 23rd of March, and that's a morning event, and that is in central London. But as with all of the content that we've talked about today, we'll be sharing that out to all of our wider audience, along with the copy of or the link to today's webinar as well. So if you want to get in touch and talk about anything that you've heard, obviously we love sharing content and our passion for digital, but if you want to talk to us about helping your brand out at all with your travel marketing needs, please do get in touch. We're always very happy just to have an initial chat and look at your market and what activities you've been doing and give you some honest feedback to hopefully start a conversation. And then finally, it just leaves me to thank you all for attending. Thank you for listening and signing up today. I hope you found the content of use, and we hope to see you tuning into one of our webinars or attending one of our events in future. Thank you very much.